Welcome back to Foundation Homestead. We got some work done on the milking barn. When I left this morning, it was snowing right along, but it didn't slow down progress. Here's what we got done today.
Stewardship is everything.
Well, I'm in the shop today because I'm making gussets, so we'll be ready to build our rafters when we get ready to do that. And this is what the finished product looks like. And the reason we're in the shop is because I need 132 of these, because there's 6 of these on each rafter. We sandwich the board in between here, put another one there, and we'll glue and staple this all together. But the reason we're in the shop is I want to show you how we go about making these. And we build a jig, and that jig is something that takes a little bit of time to make, but it's very worth your while if you have something that you need that many pieces of and they need to be identical. So basically I just started out with a scrap piece of lumber. This doesn't need to be fancy, and you don't need to put a lot of time into making it. But basically I put a runner on here, I glued and tacked it to the bottom of this OSB, and that's the same size as the grooves in my table saw. And then on top of it, takes a little more time to lay this out. If you've got a pattern to start with, you kind of know where these need to be. But again, these are just strips of wood that I glued and tacked it to this board. I put this little thing on here just to make it easier to run the sled back and forth. But to start with, you have to have your blanks cut. And this is a design issue, and we might show you how we came up with that. But basically these blanks are 2 feet long, and they're 1 inch and 13/16 when they're done, from the bottom of the board to the top of the peak. And when you end up with this ends up being a 135-degree angle. And we designed our rafters so that they all were this exact same size. If you change the pitch of your roof, obviously it changes the pitch of this. And so I've got a blank here that I made up just for this purpose. And again, this is 2 feet in length, and it's 1 inch. It's actually 13 inches, a full 13 inches, just to make a little bit over. But sometimes you want to fudge a little bit so you can make the best use of your sheet goods that you have. And so once the sled's on the table, there's another trick. Isn't that big of a deal, but when you do this, it helps a lot if you put car wax on there, like turtle wax or something that seals that. It makes the sled slide on the table a lot easier. And basically, your strips, you just take the blank, lay it on there, shove it into place, turn the saw on. Flip it over end to end. And that's your finished product. And they will all come out just identical. So again, it takes a little bit of time to make it, but it's well worth your time, especially, as I said, we need 132 of these. So this is where that will get done.
We built all of our rafters on the second floor deck. You can see a pile of gussets there, and we're sweeping snow off. We got a skiff of snow the night before. In the background you see the rafters. They're only half done because we only have gussets on one side, and we need to flip each one of those over to put the gusset on the opposite side, and then they will be ready to install. Here we're fastening a 2x6 sill plate to the top of our deck. Our rafters are going to set on top of this, and this provides us a solid place to fasten our rafters to. We nail this into each one of the floor joists to make it exceptionally secure. One of the biggest headaches was getting the gusset on the back side. Each time we did that, we had to flip one rafter over, fasten the gussets, and then we were standing them up as we made our way across the deck. The problem was that our space got more and more limited, and we have less and less room to build the rafters and then get them stood up. So what we ended up doing was moving them all to the edge, putting the back gusset on each one of those, and then standing them up and making our way to the end of the roof. If you're wanting to design your own rafters, there's an excellent resource online. It's called blocklayer.com, and in there you have an extensive menu. You go to roof calculations, choose the rafter style that you want. We used gambrel roof framing, semicircle, and it does all the calculations for you, and from my experience it is dead on. Once the rafters were fully assembled, the next step was to get it stood up. This took quite a little coordination. One guy would climb to the top of the scaffolding with a rope attached to the peak, and as he would pull up, those that were still down below would help swing the legs over so that the rafter was in place. We made our marks on the ledger board so we knew exactly where they were going to be at the bottom, and they would be toe-nailed into that ledger board. And at the top we used a rafter bracket that gives us a 2-foot spacing, so we didn't have to guess at how far apart they were at the top. This is the reason that we put the ledger board on. We're pre-drilling a hole through the rafter centered on that ledger board, and once we got that pre-drilled, we would put a 10-inch timber screw through there, which we'll show you here in just a little bit. The reason we pre-drill it is because the timber screws are rather long, and if they hit a knot or a hard spot, sometimes they want to follow the grain in the wood, and this ensures that they get sunk into that ledger board real well. We actually wanted to overseat them so they were virtually countersunk when we were done, and the reason for that is so that the head of that timber screw didn't end up holding the sheeting up when we got the roof on. Well, we've got all the rafters up. The only thing left to build is the end frame. We had to do that on the ground because there was no more room left on the top deck. We framed this in completely with the window openings, door openings, everything in place. And then we lifted it into place with our genie, and that was indispensable. Cordless tools. You gotta love them. I've got about 200 feet of air hose that hardly ever leaves the trailer anymore.
And that's all we have for you. We went from snow in the morning to shorts later in the week. Come back next time to see what we have going on. And until then, God bless.